I asked God why He had abandoned me when I was all alone. All I saw in the world was hatred. I didn't want to be a part of the deplorable human race any longer. God, you don't love me anymore, I'd yell. Why do you despise me? Crying uncontrollably, I overdosed on Zoloft. As I faded, I looked up and said softly, God, you don't want me here, so I'm leaving. This occurred in November 2002. I passed out for a while, but was surprised to find myself still alive. My son and I were sleeping on our own mattresses on the floor. We slept in the same room. I was lying beside him, watching him sleep. I prayed for his father to come get him so he could have a nice place to live. I'd lost everything and could barely feed myself. I saw myself as a failure. My head began to hurt while my son slept. The pain behind my left ear felt like it was being slashed. My neck felt as if it were on fire. I was unable to move. I was rendered immobile. That's all. My eyes moved. I was in the fetal position, lying on my left side. The sensation of large clamps clamping down my body made me feel heavy. My brain felt as if it were being operated on. I kept my eyes open and watched Mason sleep. I couldn't think or analyze the situation because I couldn't think. I had the sensation that I was disconnected from my body. My body and mind were completely disconnected. I wasn't above my body, but I could see what it looked like laying there. I was more like beside it. My eyes never shut. My son awoke as the sun rose. I was still unable to move. My son checked on me crying and yelling for me to get up. I told him everything was fine. My response was standard, similar to how people respond to "How are you?" with "fine," just responding but not thinking about it. My 9-year-old son would come back and forth from the living room to check on me. He even tried to persuade me to drink water through a straw. I couldn't move my head or drink anything. My son stated that he was afraid to touch me because my skin was so white. I remained separate from my body, but I could see everything. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I could see the window and the passage of another light. I started to smell. My son claims I peed on myself. I wasn't feeling it. My son started yelling and crying out loud. "Get up!" he yelled repeatedly. I felt a pain in my chest while still in the same position. Excruciating, like I was stabbed with a knife 3 to 4 times. I couldn't move, but I could feel every organ in my body. An organ would experience excruciating pain before abruptly stopping as if it had shut down. The same thing happened to the next organ, and then the one after that. All that remained was my heartbeat, which had slowed to the point where I could barely feel it. This was the end. I'm about to perish. I want to live, I told myself. I want to myself. I want to live, I exclaimed as loudly as I could. A pale vision appeared in front of my eyes. A being that resembled Jesus and a being that was identical to him. When I looked at one, the other faded away, and when I looked at the other, the first faded away. Finally, there was a cloud-like being. I exhaled a huge gasping breath. I inhaled some of the clouds. My heart was pounding. I want to live, I kept saying aloud over and over. "What is going on?" my son asked. I told him to push me so that I was flat on my back. I kept saying to myself, "Move, move," as I stared at the top of my foot. It was a long time before I could even move my toes. I asked my son to go into the living room and promised to return. I told God how sorry I was for trying to commit suicide. I thanked him for the opportunity and promised not to blow it. Because I should have gone to hell, God's grace provided me with this opportunity. I couldn't see anything because there was no light. I felt hell while I was dying. It was a void for me, a dreadful void, an indescribable sense of loneliness, ugliness, and horror. It was as if I had one leg in hell and one leg in heaven. My hopelessness gave me a taste of hell, but Jesus came to my rescue at the last moment. I told God that He was in charge and that He was greater than evil. I told him I would stay on this earth and be a good mother because I was no longer afraid of evil. God's grace enabled me to crawl to the living room. Because we didn't have a phone, my son went next door and dialed 911. I was in the emergency room for 3 days. They admitted me to a mental hospital because it was a suicide attempt. I didn't mind because I was still alive. My life has changed dramatically. My son's life as well. I'm thankful for everything, every minute. You're free to ask me anything. I'd love to share my story with researchers or anyone else for that matter. I am very proud of it. It is both the worst and best experience I've ever had. Thank you for conducting this research. Story number 2. There are 3 accounts. During my battle with tachycardia, I had 3 distinct experiences. I was in graduate school at the time, and I had just completed all of my work for the summer class. My heart stopped beating around 4 a.m. on a Friday. Saturday morning, I awoke briefly at 2 a.m., then again at 7 a.m. When I first awoke, I assumed that someone must be very sick because mom, sister, and brother were all there. My initial thoughts were of confusion because I had no idea what had happened. As my mind began to return, I felt tremendous fear because I knew I had been somewhere and that if I didn't want to end up in Ward C, I had better keep my mouth shut. The first was an experience in which I landed or appeared on a cloud-like substance similar to a street, but you couldn't feel it when you walked on it. I was standing alone, but there were people milling about further away. They were in this massive gymnasium-like structure that felt enclosed and appeared to have a roof, though I couldn't see it. Yet it seemed to go on forever. Open air, bright white and clean, with nothing particularly spectacular in sight. 3 elderly men, possibly in their 60s, wise wrinkled but not feeble, were standing nearby, and one of them approached me and asked, "Can I help you?" I was completely perplexed. I'm not sure where I am, what I'm supposed to be doing, or where I'm supposed to go, I explained. He returned to the huddle with the other 2. We don't think you're supposed to be here yet, said the same man. Okay, I said, and that was the end of it. I recall turning around, but I'm not sure how I returned in this incident. I remained silent on this one. The second incident happened in the cath lab, where they were about to test several medications on me. They had the wire in my leg and in my heart, and they were controlling my heart, inserting heartbeats to see if the medications were effective. This one, however, did not. It was 10 times brighter than the sun, but it didn't hurt my eyes at all. I remember the warning to never look directly into the sun, and the thought crossed my mind, but I continued to stare. While it was darker around the light, it didn't seem like the traditional tunnel. This bath enveloped me. It felt like a bath, or maybe warm jello, except I didn't get wet. The bath was filled with unconditional love, acceptance, and forgiveness. I just didn't want to leave. It was superb. Take the best steak, the best lobster, the most spectacular view, and the best booze to describe it. In other words, take the best of everything you've ever felt, done, or been, and throw it all at you at once. It's only a fraction of how delicious the feeling is. To the left were beings in human form, but I couldn't tell what they were or what gender they were. They were more like shadows. The man appeared at the foot of the bed, coming from the light. He resembled me in appearance, standing 5'10" to 6 feet, with a beard and short hair. He didn't look exactly like me, but I guess what I mean is that he was just a typical Joe. I said it, even though I didn't have to, because he could read my thoughts and I his. I'm humiliated. Why are you embarrassed? He asked as he moved toward the right side of my bed. Because I've made a lot of mistakes, I explained. Of course you did. He chuckled softly, like a grandfather. This is how you learn. At that moment, I felt instantly forgiven for everything. I won't go into detail about my life review because it was, well, lengthy. But it happened in less than a second, and I saw everything I've ever done, said, written, or thought. Embarrassing. We had a brief mental conversation before he asked, "Is there anything else you'd like to know?" "Yes," I replied to the age-old question. Why are we here on Earth? You're only here on Earth for one reason, the man replied. You're only here to assist one another. Almost certainly implying that we were only here for a short time to perform that function. I believe for some higher purpose that will be revealed in the future after death. He then said, Is there any question that you can't come with me right now? Even though I knew he could read minds, I remember thinking, oh no, this is it. I'm in school right now, and I don't have any insurance to bury me, I explained. I guess I was expecting a debate, or at the very least some persuasion or discussion, but he dropped my hand and I began to fall backward. I awoke in the cath lab in tears, acutely aware of where I had gone, what I had seen, and what I had done. This was my most detailed and profound experience, perhaps the most life-changing. The third time, I was flying above rolling fields of green grass, similar to the images of Ireland. I hovered above the hills, heading toward a cliff-like area. I stood with my back to one of these rolling hills after surveying the area. I was kicked in the chest by a donkey. I tumbled backwards, falling over and over. There was no pain, and when I landed on my back, a light appeared above me. This is where things get a little murky, but it was somehow communicated to me that I would never have to worry or fear for the rest of my life. The bright place with the 3 men is where I would go when I die, and finally, I will not have to worry about my unfulfilled purpose. All I had to do was live my life, and that mission would be completed. I've only had one out-of-body experience since, but it could have been a dream or an episode from which my internal defibrillator saved me. I could fly wherever I wanted and appear wherever I wanted and see whomever I wanted in an instant. It was powerful, but as I previously stated, it could have been a dream. I fulfilled the command to help one another by transitioning from accountant to teacher. I am now a professor and assist a large number of students in becoming accountants.